Well, it's another week and another episode of the number one podcast in STEM and technical education. I'm Matt Kirkner, your host of the Tech Ed Podcast. You know, we talk all the time in K 12 about what we call career pathways. It feels like you can't turn your head in K 12 education without somebody bringing up that term. I've served on so many committees and so many blue ribbon commissions, if you will, that determine career pathways through the K 12 space. Well, what if we're talking about not just how we create career pathways in K 12, but how we create pathways across the entire arena of employment? And that is the topic that we're talking about today with the CEO of an organization called Career Highways. Our guest this week on the Tech Ed Podcast is Liz Eversoll, and she is here as CEO of Career Highways. Liz, so awesome to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's dive in and talk right away about, is the premise right? We're talking all about career pathways. We hear that over and over and over again. Your organization, Career Highways, is doing some really, really cool things in the space specific to employers and so on. So kind of from 30,000 feet, just give us a sense for what the organization is all about.
Yeah, great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. We love talking about career pathing and skills and how organizations become skills based. And really fundamentally that's what we do is we help organizations become skills based. And you have to become skills based in order to build pathways. You have to become skills based to have a job architecture, right? And job architecture supports pathways. So fundamentally, that's what we do is help those organizations become skills based.
Got it. And when you say those organizations, give us a sense for what would be a typical partner that you might work with.
Yeah, we work with employers that are of a large enough complexity where they need career pathing. They can't just put it on a PowerPoint slide anymore and tell their employees, here's how you move up in the organization. So typically 1,000 or 2,000 seats and up, all the way up to 60, 70, 100,000 employees is where you need career highways to help you really map out pathways.
Okay.
Because the more employees you have, the more departments you have, the more paths you have within the
Right.
organization. And typically, this has been a very, very hard problem to solve, right? Because we just finished working with a large organization that has about 60,000 employees.
Wow.
So they had 3,500 different roles and 230 different pathways.
Wow.
So unless you have a platform or a system where you can land this, it's an impossible problem to solve with spreadsheets and PowerPoints.
Absolutely. Well, and even if you in the take the HR department, for example, can figure that out with some software platform, whether it's a database or a spreadsheet or so on, being a team member within that company and understanding the different pathways available to you, especially if there's 230 of them, that becomes a big challenge. So are we kind of getting at the thesis behind, why your organization exists?
It is. And typically, a lot of your HRIS systems have really focused on the administrative side and helping the HR professional, but not necessarily helping the employee. And so, the big thing that we do is make pathing and your skills transparent to the employee. And so, if you take every role in the organization and you map it to skills, and you take every person in the organization and you map it to skills, then you have transparency. I can look at my skills and any role across the organization and know if I'm a fit for that or what skills I need to develop in order to move up.
When you think about some of those larger companies, and even a mid-market company that's got a few thousand employees, and I'm an employee in that company, and there might be a job or a role in that organization that would be a perfect fit for me. Might be two departments over, might be three plants over. Maybe I've always
Yeah,
wanted to live in some part of the country, and I'm in another part of the country, and I may not even be aware of what those opportunities are. So it's a way of creating transparency as well for the employee to say, really opens up their mind to be what might be possible for them, correct?
absolutely. Yeah. And this has been long been on the top few issues that employees have. They want transparency, they want to know how to move up in the organization. And most times it's one of the top reasons they leave an organization is because they don't know what the opportunities are in the
Huh.
organization. And managers don't have a grasp of that, right? If you have 30 departments in your organization and 60,000 employees, there's no way you can keep up on that
Sure.
unless you have a system that will tell you, hey, here's the skills you have, here's opportunities, here's how you match to that, or here's how you get there.
Right. And so you're what I'm hearing is that I may be in an organization and there's the perfect opportunity for me, but I don't even know that it exists.
That's right.
And I may get recruited out or even self-select out of that organization when I could have stayed there. And if I already fit the culture and I've got the kind of skills and aptitudes and attitudes that are valuable to that employer, now I'm an employer and I've just lost a key member of my team that I could have ushered through this totally other path through my organization and now they're working for someone else.
That's right. So it gives not only visibility to the employee so they know what their opportunities are, but also to the employer so they know what is their talent pool? What skills do they have in inventory? Because if you have to go out and hire, you're going to pay 10, 20, 30% premium to
Right.
hire an external person.
Right.
And then it's going to take you 6 to 18 months to get them productive.
Right.
So, tremendous savings to the organization if you can figure out internal mobility and how you have visibility to all the skills in your organization and where those will fit.
I was literally meeting with a Fortune 500 company this week, and they shared some data with me that just blew me away when they were bringing in technical people into their organization, in this case, manufacturing. So think about electromechanical technicians or automation technicians. And they said, even if they've got the requisite pedigree from from an education standpoint, they said 16 to 20 weeks of training to get them ready to go on the floor and an investment of $30,000. So
Absolutely.
you think about now, you're taking all of that time, you're taking that person out of in this case, off the shop floor, out of the operation, but it could be anywhere in the organization, investing another $30,000 in training that person, not to mention the acquisition cost of recruiting them in the first place.
Yeah, and the time, right? The lost
Right.
opportunity because it takes longer to fill from external than from internal.
Yep.
So it's a recipe for success if you can make skills transparent to the organization. What are the skills on the role? What are the skills for the individual? Here's the training available to you to help you get there.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that whole idea. And it's, it's certainly the skills and the training. And then the other part when we talk about the importance of workforce training in general is if I've got somebody working in my organization, I like to say that every individual has a personality and every company has a personality. We call that culture. And if my organization has a culture that's a fit for this individual, that's not always automatic either on either side, right? So if I'm a
Correct.
team member that's like, hey, I really like this company and the way it does business, but I don't see a career path for me. I need to go elsewhere to be able to advance my career. Or if I'm that employer that says, well, we've got this individual who is wired in exactly the way that's a perfect fit for my culture, and then I'm losing that person, that can be a huge expense as well. So I mean, the idea behind why you exist makes all the sense in the world. Am I correct? I mentioned in the intro we talk all the time about career pathways in formal and traditional education, and it's almost been I actually had somebody tell me 6 months ago, we're not supposed to use the pathways term anymore because it's become so overused and it means so many different things to so many different people.
That's true.
Yeah, it probably is. But when we think about career pathways, we're at least in my world, we're usually thinking about a high school student, a middle school student, and what are the careers available to that individual. You don't hear that word or that concept so much with employers. Is that correct? And is that starting to change?
It is starting to change, and I mean, that is the reason that we exist even before AI came and put a ton of pressure on making sure your organization has the right skills, and organizations have to react much more quickly because skills are changing more quickly. Organizations, because I mentioned employees have said for the last 10 years, I need to know how to move up in the organization. And it's changing, younger folks that are coming into the organization, they're asking day one, how do I move up? How
Right?
do I get paid more money? Versus maybe our generation, we were much more patient and
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't push on those things. But those are expectations that employees have when they come in the organization on day one. And so employers are forced to figure that out. I think one of the big disconnects is we talk a lot about career pathing in education, and now we're talking about it in employers, but those are not connected.
Right?
Right, we're building career pathways, and I would call those more learning
Mm-hmm.
pathways, and they're not connected directly to a pathway in an employer,
Interesting.
right? And so that's what we try to do too, is take that education and training and the programs and make sure they're mapped specifically to the pathways and the roles in an organization based on skills,
Sure. So,
right?
do you find commonality? Like, let's take, I spent a lot of time in manufacturing, so I'll just use that as an example. If I've got three manufacturing companies and they've all got, entry level positions available in their organization, they may call them different things, but they're similar in terms of the aptitudes that they're looking for, the competencies that they're looking for, and the hard skills, if you will, that they're looking for. Um, how do you then map from, let's say, a K-12 district or a statewide K-12 program into those types of roles, knowing that they might have the same responsibilities or very similar, but be called different things?
Yeah. Well, we normalize those roles,
Okay,
and then we distill all of the skills that are required on those roles, and we really don't care what the role is because the skills are the most important thing,
sure,
right? And so then if I know the learning pathway and all the skills that folks are getting when they complete those, then it's a very easy match to know, are you prepared for these particular roles?
so you mentioned earlier 230 different pathways in one particular employer. Are you doing this across the entire enterprise, or are there
Yes.
certain competencies areas
Yep.
that you're focusing on, or it's like it doesn't matter, whatever department,
It
whatever
doesn't
role?
matter. Yep, we do it
Okay,
across the entire enterprise, and it's really very interesting. What comes out of that is that organizations figure out that, you know, there's only a handful of skills which are very strategic to the organization, and they come up in role after role after role. And so, once you become skills based, not only is it insight to the employee about where they need to go, and the employer is about who has this talent, but also where they should invest,
sure.
right? If I know I have these 20 skills that are strategic across my organization, that's where I'm going to point my L&D and my investment dollars there, right?
Sure, absolutely. So what about the kind of the personality or the soft skills side of things? I mean, I'm a huge believer, just to give it up right out of the blocks, that we don't talk enough about hard skills. By the way, we have so many employers that are saying, give me somebody that comes to work every day and stays off of drugs and can take direction, and I want that person. It's like, well, what
Yeah.
if you have this role with all these skill requirements, and we can give you somebody that not only has the soft skills that you want, but is also has those hard skills that now you don't have to maybe invest the $30,000 in the first 6 months of training that person. What do you say to somebody that says, hey, this is great that we're talking about skills, but what about the competencies and the culture fit? How does that work in?
Yeah, so we kind of look at your technical skills, right? And those are things that can generally be taught. And then the soft skills, so that's communication, collaboration. And then what we're also seeing coming out of that is that business context is becoming much more important, right? As we start to use tools and AI and do more automation, these folks need not just the soft skills, but business
How
context.
would you define business contact?
You understand what the work is. You can measure if that work is good or not, if the output is good or not, if it is meeting the goal that the organization has, right? And so a lot of times we look at like a role and say, well, that's going to get fully automated.
Right.
But then now you've lost potentially those skills and that business context that you need in order to make sure that the automation you've created meets the business needs,
Absolutely,
right?
and yeah, and I'm looking forward to exploring all of that because I know there's a huge AI component to the work that you're doing,
That's
and
right.
we're going
Yep.
to get into some of the nuances of how do we balance the human element with the huge benefits that we're now
Right.
seeing from artificial intelligence. Before we get to that, just a question on this. I mean, first of all, this makes so much sense, right? And as somebody that has been in, I've been running businesses in manufacturing and in ed tech for now, well, 1995, I think was when my first chief
Mm,
operating officer job was.
You're
So that's,
dating yourself.
yeah, exactly. Well, anybody that's watching us on YouTube has already done that for me. So, um, but but for sure, I've been doing this a long time. This makes so much sense, and I've worked with large Fortune 500 companies that I've been a part of, and a lot of small to mid-sized companies as well. Um, is this something that's existed for a while, or is this something that employers are just waking up to in terms of these pathways through their organizations?
There's been a talk within organizations, maybe the last 7 to 10 years, about becoming skills based,
Okay,
and that everyone sees the value to that. I shouldn't say everyone. Many organizations are trying to pursue and becoming a skills based organization, but it's been an intractable problem. It's been especially in large organizations because you have to look at every role. You have to identify the skills on every single role. You need a business stakeholder review that and say that's exactly what we need for the organization. And now with AI, that's changing very quickly, right? The skills I need today may change because of automation to skills I need that in 3 months are
sure,
different, right? And so, so that has been the issue is like keeping that current. Like as soon as many organizations, sometimes in healthcare, these things take like 3 years
hmm,
to land your job architecture and your skills. And in today's world, by the time you get that done, it's out of date,
right.
right? And so it's just been very manual. It's been spreadsheets. It's been PowerPoints. and it's been impossible to keep current. But now with technology, we can do that. We have curation to go out and always be looking at what skills are happening in the marketplace. How are these jobs evolving? What are the competencies that are required? And then you can land that in a system of record like Career Highways and
Sure.
keep it current.
So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of this. And as we're recording this in Mequon, Wisconsin, you could draw 50-mile radius around the studio here, and you've got tons of companies with thousands of employees. Rockwell Automation is right across the street.
Yep.
We've got companies like Sargento and Plexus and SC Johnson, and tons and tons of larger companies, and lots of them that are in that 1,000 to 2,000 range too, in terms of seats, as you call them. So if I'm a company like that, what does the engagement look like? I've got to determine what are all these different skills that are important in the roles that I have in my organization. I've got to figure out what are the skills that are incumbent in the team members that I have on my team. What is kind of the back end of this? What's going on that makes this all work?
Yeah, when we first started a few years ago, we would go to an organization and say, "Hey, just give us all your materials, give us your job postings, give us your list of roles, give us all your materials." And then they would kind of look at you with a blank stare, be like, "I don't know where all that stuff is. It's not standardized. It's all a mess." And so then over the past few years, we've really been able to collect all the data and the information, and so now we can actually create your job architecture within a few weeks, and we have millions and millions of uh, data sets around jobs and skills and all the information based on segment. And so we can go to an organization and say, if you have that material, that's great, but if you don't, we'll build that for you. And then within a few weeks, we give them the job architecture and the roles and the jobs, and then the business is more engaged because
Sure.
it's not a blank sheet of paper, like, "Tell me the skills you need," and write down everything
Right.
soup to nuts. It's, "Here's what we think your roles look like and the skills," and they can tweak it and say, "This needs a higher competency expectation," or, "This is a bigger priority for us," so they tweak that, and once that's done, then that can go right in front of your employees with a nice visualization and a pathway with how they move up in the organization and what skills they need.
So does it look like a flow chart when it's done? Like I've got all these positions and I've got these people, or what am I looking at when I say architecture?
Yeah, so there's the visualization. If you think of like a traditional pathway, I want to go from accountant one to accountant two to accountant three to accounting manager. It's a visualization that you would see. That's a traditional linear
Right.
pathway. But now with skills, we now have what we call as a career lattice. And so now I don't have to go from accountant one to two to three. I can go from accountant one over here to a financial analyst, right? And so that's more of a lattice. Because of my skills,
Right.
I'm able to move over here into a new pathway or a new department in the organization.
So how do you visualize that with, look at a typical, large company might have, I mean, how many different roles? Might be 1,000, 2,000 different roles. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
what's a
one we
number?
did was 3,500.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
how do you? You're just curious. Like, is this like a visualization tool that's the size of a wall in a
Yeah.
conference room, or how do you navigate through all that?
No, the visualization is smaller. Like I want to look in a department or in an
Okay,
area or in a specialty and see those things because that needs to be manageable
sure.
by the individual. But if you want to know any role that you fit to in an organization, you can just go in and look and it'll tell you, here's your best fit
Yep.
based on your skills match. You have an 80% match to this role, you have a 70% match to this role. And then you can answer some questions like, what are you really interested in? And then we can pull those roles up and say, here's your fit. And then here's how you develop in those particular areas.
Got it. So one of my goals in a podcast like this is to ask you so many questions that I get to the point where you say I can't tell you that because you're getting too close to our secret sauce. But let me ask you this. I was just in a meeting with it was about 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Good friend of mine, Rapid City, South Dakota, entrepreneur, been tremendously successful, and he's doing a bunch of really cool AI stuff now.
Yeah.
And his whole thesis is, you've got two kinds of data sets, right? We've got the public data set that if I'm going to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, whatever platform I'm using, um, and I'm asking it a question that's going to, it's, I mean, there's some proprietary data in there, but it's a publicly data. I can do a query, you can do a query, and we're going to have access to the same data. And he said the real trick about AI for the next, 2 to 5 years is all these proprietary data sets that we have inside of our organizations.
That's right.
And so you've got to be having just building a tremendous amount of data inside of career highways that you're leveraging to answer these questions and to hone in on what are the pathways for an individual, and then what are all these different skill sets? How does AI play into
Yeah.
what you're doing?
I mean, we call that our workforce graph, right? So we have all the data sets, the roles, the jobs, the training, the certifications, the pathways, the skills, right? That's our whole workforce graph. And
Right?
we can look at that by segment or industry or company or what have you. And obviously, we need AI to help us look at that. Um, AI is good for a lot of things, right? To help give you insights and perspective, but it's not deterministic, right?
Right?
Unless you make it
What do you
deterministic.
mean by deterministic for our audience?
Like if I go into a chat session, I ask a question and I ask that same question again, I could possibly get a different answer,
Right?
right? So it's not that I don't get the same answer every single time. It's
Right?
not like ones and zeros
Mhm.
when we're writing code and generating a dashboard. We
Right?
always know we're going to get the very same
Yep.
answer every single
Exactly.
time. AI doesn't do that,
For
and
sure.
so we built some proprietary technology, which we just released here. We call it Sign, and
Okay.
that is technology that will take enterprise knowledge, a document, information, data, and structure it so that an AI agent,
Mhm.
will always process the data in the same way. It
Interesting.
understands that here's how this data is defined, here's how the relationships of this data, and so when you reason over this data, you have to use this rule set every single time. And so we call that Sign. You can go out and look on our website
Sure.
and take a look at that. And then we pair that up with what we call enterprise canon.
Okay.
And canon is your source of truth. So it's not, you don't just go and hook up your Microsoft Copilot to
Right?
every single document in the
Yep.
organization because you have all these versions out there. And I don't know which one is the source of truth or
Yep.
canon as we call it.
Yep.
And so we distilled on in an information architecture what is the canon for the organization because data is good, but I need to understand the rules
Yep.
for the organization. I need to understand that you build pathways using this rule set, and another organization builds it on levels and salary versus department. And so there's different ways that we
Sure.
can build this. We have to understand that rule set, and that's the enterprise knowledge. So we take that enterprise knowledge, we put that in canon, we say that's the source of truth,
Mhm.
and we use sign to reason over that in the same way every single time.
Got it. Yeah, one of our more recent guests was Hector Colon of Lutheran Social Services. We talked about canon and truth in the sense of
Oh,
spirituality, and you think about
yeah.
the genesis of the Bible or whatever
Yep,
whatever
that's where
other
it comes
source of
from.
truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I love the use of that. I couldn't let that one pass because it's a really good way of looking at it, right? If you're
Yeah.
looking at the very original manuscripts of a religious writing, if you will, and going back to the source of truth. In this case, you're saying we're always going to come back to this set of principles, this true north, this set of truth for us, and then use that in doing all of our analysis. Um, on the architecture side, just fascinated by this. Is this like data lake, dataverse, MCP server, Azure, or I can't tell
All
you?
of that.
Okay, yeah, okay, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge, data lake, and then, we have connectors to it.
Okay,
And then, all the enterprise knowledge goes into a certain data source, and then,
sure.
sign is our language that we put those constructs in,
How do you spell that?
and
Is that SIGN?
SIGN,
Okay,
it's an acronym for Signal Intelligence Graph Network.
okay,
So
good.
sigil is like a symbol,
Yep.
right? So that's what it does. So liken it to like SQL. You use SQL language to
Yep.
talk to data, right? We
Mhm.
use sign to reason over enterprise
Okay.
knowledge.
Is that a commercially available system, or is that something you
The
created, the
sign
sign?
is an open source,
Okay.
so you can go to Apache, and
Yep.
that's open source, so anyone can use that to help structure their data. And then we have some runtimes and some tools that will help. And there's a GitHub
Got it.
repository out there that you
Okay.
can look at. But yeah, contact us if you want to talk more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put the contact information and all that into the show notes as well. So if our audience is curious, we can send them in that direction. We'll let them know where that comes at the end of the episode. Where'd you learn all this stuff?
I'm a computer
You
science.
are. Okay.
Yeah, but also have a chief product officer who's brilliant, and he's actually the inventor of Sign.
Wow.
So we collaborate closely on that. Like we have for the company, I've always tried to build our canon, right? So
Yep.
everyone knows, like, here's our mission, here's our vision, here's our message, here's our point of view, here's all these things, and putting them in one place. And so, so that was sort of the start of Joe, our product officer, trying to figure out how we make that deterministic.
Got
And
it.
so that's when we came up with the sign language to reason over that enterprise
Cool.
knowledge.
Yeah.
And then our other big tenet is to talk to your data, right? So it's very difficult to get decision level intelligence from dashboards or reports, right? Because as a business leader, I'm going to look at data and I'm going to say, well, that's interesting. What about this? What about I have the next question and the next question.
Right.
I can't get that from a static report. And many
For
times
sure.
I can't get that from a dashboard. I have to go ask someone,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Somebody's
So
got to build a pivot table or write a new query or
that's
whatever.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I want to talk to my data. I want to say, "Oh, those are our strategic skills. Who has them?"
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Do we have training to get these people where they need to be? Right? I would keep on asking the
Right.
questions. So if I can just go into our chat, which we call Scout, and ask those questions, and now I'm using Canon and Sign
Yeah.
in the background here to make sure that those answers are the same every
Sure.
single time. And we're structuring all the Python scripts and the data elements so they're calculated the same every single time. Then I can get decision level
For
intelligence.
sure. So how close are you to the NLP side of things where I can actually literally speak to my data and have a conversation with it? Are you getting there already there?
Yeah, we're there um, with controlled questions, right? I don't want to. We haven't released the hounds yet, where you could just ask anything
Yep.
because we want to make sure that, and maybe we will always stay there,
Right.
right? Because we want to make sure that those things are
Yeah. You
deterministic.
got to have some guardrails around it. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, this is all very new. This is technology. I've been in technology a long time. It is amazing to me the things that we can do.
It's crazy. And that we couldn't do a year ago. I mean, it's
That
just,
I couldn't do last month.
yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, it's insane.
It is insane how fast this is all moving.
Yeah.
We could have a whole conversation around that.
Yes, we
The
could.
what you're talking about though, you think about how um I almost laughed. I was listening to a radio show today or this week, and it wasn't a radio, it was a podcast. But the podcast host, who's a little bit older, probably mid to late 60s, was like, "Yeah, I was using this Gemini on Google, and it's even better than the search engine." I'm like, "Yes,
Well, yeah.
it's." I'm like, "Come on, you're living in the Stone Age here."
Yeah, for
You would have
sure.
been able to get away with saying something like that 18 months ago, and
Yeah,
today you say something like that, and you sound like you're just totally out of touch. It's just, but it's to the point of how quickly all of this
yeah.
is starting to move. But you start to think about, and I've been, I was a manufacturing CEO for 20 some years and chief operating officer before that, and the kind of problems that you try to solve in business, where it's like, all right, we have this new growth opportunity. Who are we going to use to fill it? Or so and so, we want to promote them, but I don't have anybody in the organization that I can move into that position. Or do I need to recruit from the outside? And if I do, what are the skills that I need to have? And what you're telling me, if I'm understanding you right, is I can literally sit down in the same way I would engage with with ChatGPT or Claude and have a conversation with this data set that is reflective not just of the skills in my organization but the skills I need in my organization, and also being informed by similar problems that have been solved in other organizations. That's really what we're talking about.
That is what we're talking about. Yeah, and I mean, our belief is that the user interface probably goes away.
Right?
Right, the user interface that we've spent so much time
Right.
on in
Yeah.
our SaaS applications.
Yeah.
So, because I really just want to ask the question at the time that I need the answer,
Right.
right? Not when I got to go in this system and I got to build my career development plan. I got to do all this stuff,
Right.
right? I just want to know, oh, I think I want a new job because my manager just made me crabby.
Yeah.
So, like, what skills do I need to go be a project manager in this other group?
Yep.
Like, I
And
just want to
stay in
ask
my
that.
organization. Yeah.
Yeah. And what training do I need? Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
maybe that's interesting and I can start down that path. So I mean we run our organization now small, albeit, but with Canon and Sign, and I don't go into our line of business systems. I don't go into our financial records. I don't go into our CRM system. I do everything through the connectors and through Claude.
Amazing. And
So
you mentioned small organization. How many team members?
we have 15.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is amazing, by the way. I was just reading an article last week about how how quickly AI native companies are scaling up. And
Well, yeah, because we can do literally 10 times the amount of work with the same amount of
yeah,
people.
totally. And
But
that's not an
that
exaggeration.
is not an exaggeration. I know people do think that, but for me, I can see the bottom of my inbox now, and that hasn't happened in 2 years,
Wow.
or I can see the bottom of my task list now, and that hasn't happened in 2 years.
Right? Yeah, it's just amazing what you can get done. And I worry. Honestly, I'm starting to worry about the organizations that, a couple years ago we'd say you probably have 5 or 10 years. You don't have 5 or 10 years. I mean, if
I
you're
think
not,
you have a few years,
yep,
a very large organization. I think you have a few
yep, for
years,
sure.
but it does take a mindset change. Like it's a relentless pursuit of optimizing your work
Right,
processes. Like it This is why the business context is so important because the people that understand what the work is that needs to be done, how it gets done today, how it can be improved with automation, and then is it good?
right,
Is that what we want? Those people are so important to the
absolutely.
organization, and you don't know where those skills lie
Right,
today.
but they're there, and we're it's totally separate from the podcast. I'm involved in a family of ed tech companies that has now 10% of the workforce in those businesses is just data scientists,
Yeah.
and those were positions that didn't even exist in those, and not even close to that 2 years ago. And now it's like if I tell companies if you're trying to do business in this day and age and you can't point to the person who's responsible for how agentic AI is going to transform your business and how you use the proprietary data set that you have to accelerate growth, you're in trouble. I mean, you need to have
You
those
are in
people.
trouble, but I don't want those like pure data scientists or AI folks. I want the people who understand the business,
Right.
right? And I want them, and I'll educate them on how to use these tools.
Yeah.
Like,
How do you do that out of curiosity? We're off on a tangent, but we love to do that on the podcast. How
yeah,
do you educate them?
well, fortunately, I've been around long enough so I know all the areas of the business and how those things need to happen. And so does my product officer and our revenue officer. So at the high level, we can define those processes and put in place the tools that illustrate how those things will work. And then you start to get them in the hands of your team in a structured manner. Not, I think a lot of mistakes companies are making are just saying, here's all the tools, go to town and unlimited token usage and all this kind of stuff
Right.
with no construct about what we're trying to achieve. Right. I want to look at a very specific process and I want to make that better.
Yep.
Right. And I want human engagement and automation, all of those things along the way, because we believe a human at the wheel,
Yeah.
right? We're not just going to turn on these things and they're going to do all the work of all my customer service reps. It's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen in the way you want it to
Yeah. Well,
happen
as a
for the
client, you don't want to
business.
interact with that type of,
You don't want
that's
to
not
interact with
right.
that, right? And so it does free us up. Like customer service, we all know we hate talking to a chatbot and we hate talking to a recording,
Mm-hmm.
but now we could take those people and they could actually talk to customers
Mm-hmm.
because all the fundamental work can be automated or augmented for
Absolutely.
them. So
Huge, huge
yeah,
difference maker.
so people that understand the process and understand the business, those are the people that are so valuable.
Yep. Absolutely. There's
And
no
you don't want to
question.
lose them. And those are the people, unless you understand their skills, and you have to understand what skills are critical in your business and
Mm-hmm.
then find the people that have them. And those are the ones you need to take care
For
of
sure.
and build succession plans and training and all of those things.
And the other thing that we're finding is that as we're starting to use more and more, back end AI in the organization, it's, employees that were originally threatened by that, or we call them team members that were originally threatened by that, they start to recognize that if you do it right, you can let them do more of what they like to do, right? I think about like our business development teams in some of our companies, and what do they love? They love being in front of customers. They love being on the road. They
That's
love
right.
talking about big ideas. They love walking in and being able to say, look, I was a part of creating this for this client. What do they hate? Expense reports, proposals,
Yep.
quotes, all the detail stuff. And I'm generalizing because
Yeah.
various levels of that. And what we're finding is that if you can create automation in the parts of the business that aren't customer facing and doesn't make a difference to whoever's interacting with your business, and b are taking the things off the plate of the team members that don't want to do those things. It's not that they're losing their job. They have more time to do the stuff that's their highest and best use, more time to do the job of the part of their job that they love. And
We call that the P to work. Like that should be the first work that we go after is the pain in the ass work.
okay, nice.
Right? We call that we
Yeah,
will not do any more P to work
yeah,
because you know.
I haven't heard that term before.
Oh,
Did you come up with that, or is that
no, I think that's well known, but
okay?
we start with that, right?
Right.
Everyone has things in their job, tasks that are just you you don't want to do. They're at the bottom of your list.
Yep.
Take those things and see if you can apply the tools to get rid of that work so you can spend more time on the things you do enjoy or add more value to the business.
Absolutely. And that's what, if we do it right, and I'm not just talking about individual companies, but as a society, if we do this AI thing right, that's exactly what's going to happen. Is
Yeah.
I think we're going to have more fulfilling lives. We're going to be able to spend more time on the things that really, really matter if we do it
More
right.
time with the people interaction, right? We
Yep.
we lose that. I think about going to the doctor's office and my doctor doesn't even look at me. They're clicking on the chart the whole time and asking me questions and filling in all the little forms because
Right.
they have to, right?
Exactly.
Doesn't not even looking at you and having
Yep.
a conversation. So
Exactly. Yeah. Having the same conversation 3 times with 3 different people, and all they were doing was gathering
yeah, and
data.
just
Yep.
trying to make sure they're following the protocol. And if they don't do it exactly right, then
Right.
that's a ding on them. So,
Hmm.
but then we lose the people
Yep.
part of this. So hopefully it frees up people to spend more time with people.
Absolutely. And I don't want to make a point that let a point that you made just earlier get lost on the audience. And that is this whole idea of, as we're thinking about how we engage with artificial intelligence to improve process. I go back to my days of Kaizen, continuous improvement, lean manufacturing, where it was like there are organizations that are like, oh, we just need to do a Kaizen event. Well, for what? What are you trying to improve? What is the
Yeah,
business problem that you're trying to solve? And really starting with the process and saying, does AI have a role in making this process better? And if so, how? And if not, then let's move on to something else. Let's not solve a problem that we don't have.
that's right. I mean, and you talk about the tie to education, like this would be something I would want education to teach, like
Yes,
process improvement. How do I do it? How do I feel not threatened by it? Because that's what happens as we come along and we say we want to improve this process and everyone's like, "Ooh, that's my job," or we always have done it this way instead of understanding that process improvement makes your life better, right? And don't be
exactly,
don't be resistant to it, engage in it and explain the things you need to make the business better, right?
exactly.
Because we have to spend a lot of time getting down to, okay, I understand you don't like change, but what do you need to do your job?
Yep.
And if we can get that to you better,
Hmm.
higher quality, that would be good,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
But folks aren't taught process improvement.
They're not.
It's not, and this is something that everyone will need.
100%. This will date me a little bit as well, but one of my favorite business books goes back to the 90s, and it was by Goldratt, and it's called The Goal, which is all about how you remove the theory of constraints, they call it. How do you remove bottlenecks from a process? How do you
Yep.
identify them and move them? And I have said for decades, if you show me somebody in manufacturing that has read the goal, understands how to identify and eliminate a bottleneck, I will show you somebody who's absolutely worth their weight in gold. Because people either get it or they don't. And a lot of times people don't get it because we don't teach it early enough in school so that they've got that paradigm. And so I couldn't agree with you more. The whole idea of process, systemic or systematic thinking, I should say, systems thinking,
Yep.
troubleshooting, problem solving. It's just all
Yeah.
fundamental,
Because knowledge is democratized, right?
right?
Everyone has knowledge
Yes.
now.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
what am I gonna do with that knowledge? Like
Yep.
I can go build a rocket ship, probably.
Yep.
What am I gonna do with that?
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing that?
Yeah, the
So
knowledge part of it, and I think the connections part of it too. Like if I'm working with somebody who can really quickly make a connection between knowledge over here and knowledge over there that wouldn't otherwise be connected. I mean that wisdom or whatever you want to call it, I think is really really important
yeah,
as
I
well.
mean, we call that the business context, right?
Yep. Yeah. Coming back to that.
That has applicability because that's been a 10-step process to get from here to there,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Through whatever systems and no one really has an understanding of the full process. But now if we just think about the inputs and the outputs we need in order to make things better, then you can really use these tools.
For sure. And as we have team members who are moving across this lattice, as you call it, right? So that's the other benefit is if I got somebody to your earlier point that was, working in an accounting role and now has an opportunity in a financial analyst role, which, to people who aren't familiar with those might think, well, that's kind of the same thing. Yeah, a little bit, but there's some huge, huge differences between those roles as well. But now you've got somebody who's got the contextual knowledge of one part of the business coming into a new part and is going to have all kinds of different insights. Kind of, I mean, it's just fascinating where all this can go. Um, it's certainly better for the organization. It's better for for the team member. It kind of speaks back to this whole idea that I know you're an advocate of, which is called, and it's a new term for me, but career health,
Hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
so talk to us
Yeah.
about your use of that term and what that means.
Yeah, we have some partners that offer benefits to employers, right? Health benefits, and um, there's been a big push on well-being and financial benefits, and now career health is another one of those aspects. So, if I look at an individual, we want you to be healthy, we want you to have good financial things, and we want your well-being taken care of. Like if your pet's sick, do you need pet insurance, right?
Sure.
That's just part of all my well-being,
Yep.
and career health is part of that too. So how do I move up in the organization? How do I be more successful? Right. That makes me a more well-rounded and healthy person. And so career pathing, a big push is to have that just be part of the benefits that you offer as
Sure.
an employer.
Awesome. I love that way of thinking of it. I've got a 401k plan, I've got health insurance, I've got pet insurance, I've got mental health care if that's, if that's something that you're dealing with, and here I've got this career health plan which when you're sitting in the interview with a potential new team member. And it was interesting when you were mentioning Liz, the whole idea of people saying I want to understand my path, I want to understand how I move up in the organization. Every single interview I do, that question comes
That
up,
comes
and
up
it
now.
doesn't
Yeah.
surprise you, right? Because
Yeah.
you would expect people to want to know that, and that's always if somebody doesn't ask that question, I'm a little bit like, okay, what, is this the right person for is the right fit for our organization? But the other thing that they ask about, usually a little bit later in the interview process, if they're if they know the process, is what are the benefits in this organization? And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I can sit down with somebody and say, we've got these benefits that you're familiar with, and oh, by the way, we have this career health benefit. Are you familiar with that? Chances are they're probably not. And then that's your opportunity to really share, here's how you move through this organization. And it becomes a differentiator for the employer. Is that fair to say?
It does, and I mean, the message back to the employee is you own your career.
Right?
You own and manage your career, and you haven't been able to do that really very effectively in the past. Now
Exactly.
you have the tools, you have the skills that you need, you understand the roles, you understand the opportunities, and you can make those decisions.
Sure. Which is an opportunity and a benefit, but also places a really good responsibility on the part of the employee, right? So
That's
it's
right.
no longer that team member waiting for somebody to walk in the door and say, here's your new opportunity, or waiting for that annual review to say, here's where we think you could go. But they can be more proactive and have more agency and take responsibility for their
Yeah,
own
you
career
don't have to
pathway.
wait for your manager to say, "Okay, we think you're ready," and I'm pushing you up the ladder, or I'm
Yep.
trying to promote you in these conversations about progression, and now you can push on those things.
I think and that's just so powerful. It's
Yeah.
good. Do you have a story or two while we're going through this, both on the employer and on the employee side, where the kind of that big aha moment or that huge success story that you want to highlight?
There's a lot of them.
I'm sure.
One I like from one of the talent managers is that he, a few years ago, had a candidate come in and said, "I just interviewed at Google, and they gave me this nice little PowerPoint slide that says, 'Here's how I move up in the organization. Do you have anything like that?'" And the head of talent had to say, "No, but there are opportunities here."
Right.
And the candidate said, "Okay, thank you. I'm not going to interview here." Like,
Wow.
didn't even interview because that wasn't available
It's literally a
to
ticket
them.
to the dance for that employer to be able to have access to talent, and it's something that now that employees or potential team members are recognizing is available. If an organization doesn't have in something like this, it's a showstopper.
That's right. Yeah,
Huh.
it's a showstopper. Yeah. And getting there is hard for the employers. Like we've had some say we've been trying for 9 years to build something like this, to
Huh.
figure out how to become skills based, and it just has been this, I call it this intractable problem. It's just been too difficult, too
Right.
manual, too labor intensive.
And what is that if I'm an employer, what does that engagement with your organization look like? I mean, walk me through the path. I'm interested. I go to the show notes of the Tech Ed podcast. I'd link up to your website or however else we find you. Maybe they're just going into their GPT and saying, tell me I've heard about this, whatever. It's
How
agentic
do I do that? Yeah,
marketing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just go to careerhighways.com and book a strategy session with us, and we'll have a short conversation. We can, as I mentioned, I think I already mentioned, we can get your job architecture and pathways built within a few weeks, and then you review those and you put those in front of your employees, and you're good to go. And the the great thing is that in 4 weeks, you have decision ready intelligence. You know every role in the organization, what the skills are on those roles, which skills are strategic, where you should make your L&D investments. And once you get your employees on, then you know your inventory. And so now you know your internal mobility. Like
Yeah.
it just opens everything up once you get to skills that continuous or that fiber that connects everything.
Absolutely, that is absolutely fascinating. And you think about if I'm somebody running, a decent sized company, and I've got these questions about, how do I map to different careers? How do I find the skill sets in my organization? And you're literally telling me that here we're recording this toward the end of July of 2026. That before Labor Day I can have access to this. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. What question haven't I asked you yet that you came in here dying to be asked?
A lot of people want to know, like, on the AI side, what is the impact of AI to my organization? This is, I think, one of the most important facets we have in our skills intelligence platform. And so every single skill, we take it and we evaluate it. And what is the impact of AI at the skill level, right? And so then you can take that and roll that up to a role. So now I know customer service might have a 30% productivity increase that you could get if you augment or automate with AI.
Hmm.
And so at the C level, they know that AI is going to make an impact on the organization. They just don't have any data to know where or how much.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times we see employers that are just saying, don't hire any new people because we're going to get more productive with AI. But that's just sort of a blanket statement
Right.
without intelligence, and you don't know where to invest
Right.
in order to do that. But now you can look across the whole organization and understand every single role and what's the impact of AI on those particular roles. And then you can get the insights like, is it worth investing? Because it's not free, right?
Right.
We have to do the process automation that we
Correct.
talked about.
Yep.
Sometimes we need some new tools to help us do that. But now you can prioritize the investment of your AI transformation to the roles and the skills and the processes that are going to be the biggest impact for you.
And they do that through Liquid Insights, or how does
Yeah,
that
that's
work?
part of our skills intelligence engine that's always evaluating those skills and updating the AI impact. Then you can go into Liquid Insights and you can look at every role and know the impact of AI on every single role. So I, as a department, because a lot of times this comes down to the department manager that he has to make the decisions on hire or not hire, or if they have to make cuts, he has to make those decisions, he or she.
Right.
And today that's done without any intelligence.
Right.
I don't know what the most important skills are. I don't know where AI is going to have the most impact. I might have a sense because I know my business and I'll probably make some good calls. But we've had leaders that said, we we would not have made the decisions we made if we had this information.
Interesting. And how does Liquid Insights and the entire platform, because I know it's all interconnected, how does it know the answer to that question if I go in and say, where are the biggest opportunities to, engage AI and business process automation in my skills matrix? How does it know the answer to that?
Yeah, just because we've taken all those skills and we've assessed the impact of AI on every skill. This skill has a 10% productivity gain you might get. This skill has a 30%. We aggregate that up at the role level because on the roles, we know what the skills are that are required. We know the importance of those skills. We know the
Sure.
competencies that are required for those skills for those roles. So we build that into the algorithm. And so we know accountant one might get 30% productivity boost.
Sure.
But over here, customer service might get 50%, and we can make a recommendation. In order to get that 50%, you're going to have to do this work process automation. You
Yep.
might have to invest in a tool. So now you can just get a prioritized list of here's every role in the organization, potential productivity increase, and now you can make a business decision where you want to invest.
That makes so much sense. I've almost got to believe as important as the career health and the career pathway, incumbent worker career pathway value to the platform, the ability to say where do I need to be thinking about, leveraging AI in my enterprise is even more valuable. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't never say more valuable, but it almost is, right?
I mean, there's just so many benefits to becoming skills based, the internal mobility and the savings that I talked about, the strategic skills and the individuals that you want to maintain and build succession plans around, the impact of AI, like we call them day one. These are day one decision insights that you can get to really manage your business.
So as I'm thinking about a couple things, you talked about from the C-suite level saying this is how I can use liquid insights to determine where AI will have the most leverage in my organization and where the investments make the most sense. If I'm on the employee side, is it a tool I can use to say how do I kind of AI proof my career pathway? How do
Yeah,
I make sure?
absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
talk
So
about
that
that.
same information we make transparent to the individual. So if I'm looking at my role and there's these 10 skills on my role, they're all indicated whether the skill is a potential to be automated, the skill has a potential to be augmented, or the skill is a human advantage. And
Sure.
so we coach the HR teams to when they talk to employees, make sure that they're focusing on those human advantage and
Yep.
those AI augmentation skills.
What augmentation? Give us examples of what that might be. AI
Something
augmentation.
that I would do in collaboration with the
Okay.
AI. So,
Yep.
um, for us, we do a lot of design work. We built our design canon with
Yep.
all of our design elements and named, and now that lives in our system and sign reasons over that. So, when I say I want a PowerPoint, it's now going to go out and build me a branded PowerPoint using my voice
Yep.
that's in our canon and all of our standards. But I'm going to do that in collaboration,
Yep.
right? I'm going to say, this messaging, I want to tweak this, want to add this. Well, this is for this particular customer. So we're going to message that a little bit differently. So that's an augmented process.
Sure.
And in the past, I would have done that manually. It would have taken me someone a week
Right.
maybe to build a really good and a very good looking PowerPoint. And now you can do that in a couple hours.
I'll just give you an example. I was doing a presentation on Monday of this week, and it was actually a business process automation Kaizen event where we current state mapped out an entire, in this case, a business development process, and then looked at ways that we could automate aspects of it. So I used to travel all over the country talking about Kaizen for manufacturing, and I didn't want to rebuild a whole new slide deck for the introduction to this Kaizen event. It's been years since I've done one. So I went and I found an old slide deck from like 20 years, 15 years ago, and it was funny. I mean, all boxy and the font and the
Yeah.
the animation and everything. It was
Yeah.
just funny. It looked old,
Yeah.
really old. You look at it first, and somebody that's been in the workforce for 10 years would be like, "What is this even?" Um, and I took that and I uploaded it to Skywork AI and said, take these slides with this. I want to keep the same theme, the same message, the same language, the same images, and update the format and the scheme to something that looks more modern.
Yeah.
And it worked at it for a while. I mean, I think I get probably 700 free tokens, not free as part of the annual subscription
Yeah.
tokens on Skywork a month, and it probably consumed 4,000 of them or something like that. So
Right.
so it used a fair amount of tokens. But when that slide deck was done, I was blown away by it. Just, I mean, it's just absolutely modern. I mean, and it's just, when you talk about things like, it's just something like that, it would have taken me literally an entire day of work at least to take
Yeah,
that old slide
clean
deck
all
and
that
make it look,
up
yeah,
and tweak fonts and
yeah.
do all that kind of stuff.
And it
Yeah.
was a 30-second prompt on Skywork and it just did all the work. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
fascinating.
One of the other benefits of our sign language is that it's way more efficient. Like those, we can do it in about half the tokens,
Awesome.
that processing. So that might have taken you 4,000 tokens.
Right.
We find like 50 to 60% savings
Wow.
because it's not processing prose and information
Mm-hmm.
efficiently
Okay.
in the LLM today. So you would look at the sign language for all the design components and all the enterprise knowledge, and then it would apply that in a much more efficient manner.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely amazing. So, I mean, there's just so many different angles. I feel like we could
Mhm.
talk for
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
another couple hours on this. What is your message to employees? I mean, it's the question everybody's asking these days. I mean, you look at how fast this is moving. I think that some people that are worried about how quickly AI is going to disrupt the world of work aren't recognizing how quickly that's going to happen in some
Yeah.
cases, that it's happening even faster than they may recognize. What's your message to somebody inside an organization of 15, 20,000 people that's like, Where's my job what's it gonna look like? And am I gonna have one, 2 years from now? What should they be hearing?"
Yeah. So if you want to stay in that organization, business knowledge is going to be king,
Yep.
right? Be the one that knows how things get done, what looks good, understand the business context. And then the second would be get really familiar with these tools and how you use them to improve those processes. So If you can do those 2 things, you'll be invaluable to
Yep.
the organization.
Absolutely. I tell people even if AI isn't part of your daily job, spend an hour at night with, even GPTs and going back and forth and asking them questions and uploading files and,
Yeah.
having them do that kind of work. I mean, it's amazing now what you can do with, with Codex and other platforms that, you think about the Python programmers, for example, that we would have in businesses 2 years ago. So much of that is just,
Yeah.
you need people that can understand and interact with it, but they don't need to code anymore in most cases. And so
No,
it's just,
you don't, and, we call it a rolling epiphany, or, like, you try something and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can do this too."
yep,
And then you
exactly.
try something and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can do this too,"
Yeah.
right? It's just this rolling epiphany of what you can do with the technology, um, and in some cases, you need more than just the chat, right? You need to be able to connect to your systems of record to
Yep.
really automate those processes. But once you do that, it just opens up doors that are amazing.
It is amazing, and
And the
so
quality, like, everyone worries that that quality isn't gonna be as good, but the quality can be much better because it's much more thorough,
yep,
right? I mean, a person doing testing on a system can only do so much, even if you automate and write scripts. But
right,
when you put it through a process and it comes out and it'll tell you all the things that you haven't even thought of.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like, it
just
comes out better than when we first started building Liquid Insights. I mean, we started going down this path because we would take our reports and we would put it in, and then with our sign and our canon, and say, "Give me insights based on our enterprise knowledge and the data I have available to me," and the information I would give back to you, you were just blown away.
yeah, absolutely blown away.
Yeah,
Well, my pastor will be happy because we got Epiphany and Canon into the same episode of the
there you
Tech
go.
Ed podcast.
There you go.
So love that. Two more questions for Liz Eversol as we're wrapping up this episode of the Tech Ed podcast. Questions we love asking every single one of our guests. First one is a little bit on education. You mentioned computer science. Where did you study computer science?
I graduated from University of Houston. My husband got transferred down there, so I
Okay.
finished up down there, and I started my first career in the oil industry with
Okay.
Conoco and DuPont. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. As a undergrad in computer science.
hmm
Yep. Okay. Awesome. So you had your own. You used the word pathway, your own education pathway. What is something about the education world that might be a little bit surprising to our audience there that you think about a little differently?
Yeah, I think once you become skills based, then you look at education differently as well. I don't need to take this monolithic class to get a skill. I
Sure.
This sort of trend around micro skilling, I think, is becoming more and more important because as an organization, I want you to learn these 3 skills. I don't want to send you to a semester long class. So now the ability to take content and make it very focused around a skill and get you that competency in a short time, I think is a very interesting trend.
Yeah, it's like lean learning, right?
hmm
It's like, what is the exact competency? Who has what skills and competencies? What do they need? And then how do I pinpoint exactly? And the other part of it for me is the delivery mode as well, right? Some of us are kinesthetic, some of us are theory learners. Some people can learn from a webinar. Somebody else might be auditory. I mean, there's just so many different ways that people learn and advance their skill set that we can now meet them where they are as far as how they learn as well.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Yep, super exciting. So,
Yeah.
last question is we're going to go back in time. If I recall correctly, you grew up not too far from Galena,
Yeah,
Illinois.
I did.
So, you're a 15-year-old high school sophomore, and you could go back and give that version of Liz some one piece of advice. What would that be?
Well, we like to say your career is something that you look back on, right?
Okay,
Historically, I look back on my career.
sure.
My career isn't something I planned. Like, I could not envision myself here,
Right?
right? However many years ago, we're not going
Yeah.
to say how many, but um, now I think you have the opportunity to take control of your career, as we talked about, right? Is really have a much better understanding of the expectations of roles and skills in any organization, right? That should become more transparent to us. Like, you talk to a lot of kids, and they don't even know what this job is,
Yep.
right? They pursue this degree to get this job, and they don't even know what's involved in this job. And so that should be much more transparent to you in today's world. And you should take ownership of managing your career and look forward to your career and plan your career versus looking back and say, Well, that worked out pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice for a 15-year-old student, and so many more tools to do that
Yeah.
in this day and age. I'm going to try one more question out on you. It's a new one, and I'll give you the premise. I was in Chicago on Wednesday night, and I went to the Rush concert. So about half of our audience will be, know exactly who that is. By the way, the lines for the men's room were like 3 miles long, and the lines at the women's room was they were just walking in and out of the bathroom. So that
Yeah.
gives you a little bit of a sense of who was at the Rush concert. Neil Peart, who is the iconic drummer for Rush, passed away in 2022, and they did this whole tribute to him. It was actually really touching and really cool. But he said this. He said, you know, if I he said I would love to know what the 15-year-old version of me, I'm paraphrasing. I would love to know what the 15-year-old version of me would think of how I turned out. And I was like, wow, that is a really really good question. So, going back to that 15 version of Liz, what would she think about the person you became?
I would say she would think that's a very different. I grew up on a farm,
Yeah,
that so I had no idea like the bigger world outside of our farming community,
right.
and so um, lived in a lot of different areas of the country and had a lot of different jobs, and so I would say there's not she would not have fathomed the experience, the
Yeah.
pathway.
Absolutely. And what a great
Yeah,
message to all the young people that listen to this podcast, right? Is that, wherever your career in your life is going to take you, regardless of what you're thinking about, what it is now, you're going to go in all kinds of directions that
yeah,
you probably never would
and
have
you can
imagined.
if you take advantage of it, and lots of opportunities today.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Thanks for being a guinea pig on that one. We may have to use that question over and
yeah, you
over and
didn't
over
prep
again.
me for that one. Come
No,
on.
exactly. Well, those are the best questions, right? I will note that some folks come in with a whole pile of notes for the podcast, and in this particular case with Liz. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening to us, no notes at all, just speaking from the heart. So I
Right.
absolutely love that, as I did our entire conversation here on the Tech Ed podcast with Liz Eversoll, CEO of Career Highways. So Liz, really awesome to have you here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yep, I'm a lot smarter for the conversation and so excited about where all this is going with artificial intelligence and all the different tools and all the different capabilities that we have today, and what we're going to have tomorrow will look totally different than what we have today. And it's just really it's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this incredible time in human history. But we have to keep up. That's why we're here at the Tech Ed Podcast. We mentioned some resources. We'll put the link to Liz's organization and some of the resources we talked about in the show notes. We will put those at techedpodcast.com/Eversoll. I'll spell that for you, techedpodcast.com/EVERSOLL. And when you're done there, check us out on social media. You might be watching on YouTube already. We are all over YouTube. We're all over Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn, wherever you go for your social media. Check us out. We are there. Say hello when you are there. We would love to hear from you. Can't wait to see everybody again next week. Until that time, my name is Matt Kirkner. I'm the host of the Tech Ed Podcast. Thanks for joining us.